2021, four men got together to make a radio show that nobody asked for. This is the result.
Welcome to Broad Street Radio. I'm Michael Morris with my good friend Jonathan Meanick. Jonathan, how are you? First of all, are you nervous because first show we had a full deck here, and now it's just me and you. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I thought I was the star anyway, so.
Worst show in history coming already. Jonathan, we always start the show, one of one. Meanick on money. Let's start with that. What is your outlook on money right now?
Well, first of all, have we come up with a new title yet? Nathan, did you come up with
I know how much you
anything?
hate it. And Nate and I have figured out a little thing that we're going to put in. I think it needs its own theme song. We're keeping it because you hate it. I would get rid of it if you're like, you know what? I really love this and my family loves it. And I would just dump it.
Could you get like Isaac Hayes to do a voiceover or something like that?
I would like to, but I think he passed away about 8 years ago. R.I.P. Isaac Hayes. You're bringing the show down already.
Money. You damn right.
You damn right. So what would we be damn right about?
I don't know, man. There's a lot of people who are fearful right now, and I think it's unnecessary, quite frankly. Big picture. Yeah, I get it that there's some questions about debt. There's questions about government spending. There's questions about taxes. There's lots of uncertainty around there. So a lot of folks are a little bit nervous about that stuff. But in the big grand scheme of things, 20, 30 years from now, it probably isn't going to matter a whole lot. Now, maybe my grandchildren's children might have some concerns, but the reality is that as long as the relationship of the GDP stays intact with the debt levels, that relationship, as long as if debt levels keep going up and GDP continues to go up, we're okay. If debt levels go up, GDP goes down, that's a problem, right?
Well, I think you and I mean, we talk during the week anyway, where you talk for about 2 hours every Wednesday morning. Some of it is about this, but I think people, like you said, it's all about fear. People are so afraid of what they're watching on the news. First of all, turn off the news. There's no need to watch that. I mean, it's just there to sell you things during a commercial break. Don't worry about it. But
like brought to you by Monster.
Yeah, I mean, Monster Energy drink. When you're having a panic attack, sip. But I think a lot of what you're seeing is the news always leads with the worst information. Always. But when the financial report is attached to it, you're already like white knuckling what's being said.
Oh, sure.
And you can't relax. So you're thinking that tax burden of $2.4 billion is on me. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So we look at it the wrong way. I think in what you do for a living, helping people with their investments and finances, it's gotta be crazy when people are just piling on. Like, I gotta get my money.
Yeah. So my job is to be that voice of reason, the rock, the foundation. So if someone calls me in a panic, I mean, first of all, if someone calls me and sells and says, "Hey, I want to sell this," or I'm worried about this, the first thing I do is I ask them to buy something. I know it sounds really counterintuitive, but I'll give you a really good example.
Because that's where they hang up the phone. Just be honest.
No.
They're like, I called the wrong guy. Click.
No, they don't do that. So I had a guy who called in and left a message with Rachel. Said, "Hey, I want to sell some of this stock," and it was down in value. Well, that's not really a good opportunity to sell something. You know, realistically, you want to buy stuff when it's down in price. So I called him back and I said, "Hey, I'm really excited. I'm glad you called me in about this stock. I was super happy to hear that you called me first. So I'm sorry I didn't get to you, but hey, I think we need to buy more of this." And he goes, "Well," and I already knew he wanted to sell it, right? But I said, "We need to buy more of this." He goes, "Well, yeah, I mean, maybe that's a good idea." And I'm like, I caught him off guard. I stopped his train of thought because his only thinking was, and it's a psychological term called recency bias. What has recently happened is going to continue to happen. So the stock was going down in price. In his mind, it was going to continue going down.
It was going to
be
Enron.
Yeah, it was going to go to zero.
Also, the show's brought to you by Enron.
Fantastic. Great company.
Buy in right now.
Yes. Very low price right now.
Well, do you think that the problem is that when you get those phone calls, it's Americans don't understand finances and investing anyway, so they're limited to buy low, sell high, and hotels are red. Do you think that's the problem? Is that they don't know?
Smart people make bad decisions. It's not that they don't know. It's because they're making decisions with emotion, not with logic, right? I tell people, I'm very rarely am I the smartest person that when I walk into a room, except this room here, clearly. But
Nate takes great offense.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So basically, people use emotion to dictate what they want to do, and emotion tells you to do all the wrong things. Emotion tells you what's going to happen, continues to happen, and vice versa. So if a stock's going down in price, people think it's going to continue to go down. Well, the reality is the further down it goes, again, as long as fundamentally it's a sound company, we're not talking about Enron here, but if it's a sound company, if it's going down in price for whatever reason, at some point it'll go back up.
Right.
And the opposite happens. People think Amazon's going to the moon, right? And they don't want to sell Amazon. They don't want to take profits out of stuff because it's gone higher, so it's going to keep going up, right?
Right.
That's recency bias. So you have to fight, really I have to fight two emotions, fear and greed.
But don't we also have to do that when we're looking at it? Because I think at least once a week I hear somebody ask you, hey, man, how much Bitcoin should I have? Right. So they're talking about whatever's new. Because I remember somebody about 3 months ago was talking to you about GameStop, like they wish they would have bought it. I think we all wish we would have bought that unicorn that's going to fail. Or the best example is WeWork. Have you seen that documentary? I asked you to watch it.
I have not seen the documentary.
Don't worry, there's not a test today.
Yeah, well.
But that's an example of a unicorn, like you guys call it in your business, looking for that unicorn that you can get on the ground floor and it just takes off, right?
Right.
But at the end of the day, no one bothered to do the details and say, hey, man, all these guys are doing is just renting
At some point, someone's going to be left holding a bag of crap.
Well, you know what? First of all, I should explain. Anybody should watch this documentary just because whether it's not about investing. It is about businesses in this country, how something's hot, so we all jump in it. WeWork was the building that we're recording this show in is essentially the same as a WeWork building. It is renting office space to different companies.
Yep.
That's all they were doing. But they were getting these valuations that kept saying, oh, if they keep buying more property, they're going to make more money.
If you build it, they will come.
Right. Well, there's a local hamburger chain that did the same thing in Columbus, where the guy is quoted in the newspaper. This is obviously 20 years ago. I'm going to build until I'm profitable. And I don't mean to laugh at it, but that literally was what was said in the newspaper. So when a thing tanks and has 30 different restaurants, they all go out at the same time. It's because none of them were profitable.
Right.
So you can't spend your way into profitability, right? I'm not talking about the government.
I was like, wait a minute.
The government can, apparently, but we cannot, right?
Well, they have printing machines.
Right.
We don't have that luxury.
I got a scanner in my office. We can, whatever you got in your pocket, we can copy that.
You know what's funny is actually I had a guy I knew in high school who thought he would do that. It didn't work out real well for him.
And that man's name was Barack Obama. I want to go to what you said about people being fearful. When you're taking the phone call from somebody, because we all get it, no matter what line of business you're in, you always get that call where someone's in a panic.
Yeah.
Are they panicking because they feel like they're rich and they're losing it all, or they feel like this is all I've got?
Could be a bit of both. I think a lot of it has to do with I don't have control.
Right.
At the end of the day, I think it's just I don't have control. People want to feel in control. And so going back to what I do and trying to help people understand that there's a process and there's a purpose to everything we do. That's why when someone asks me about Bitcoin, well, from my standpoint, unless Bitcoin is part of your process or part of your purpose of getting to whatever your goal is, then what's the point in owning it if it's not?
Right.
Right. So, I'm not a big fan of putting money into something that may or may not go up and down in value. I like things that have tangible results, tied to it. I work with a lot of farmers and trying to get them to understand that, investing in companies is very similar to buying more ground. If you buy, Procter & Gamble stock or something like that, then you've bought a stock that produces something. You've got a company that makes a product, and then they also return part of their profits to their shareholders in the form of dividends. That's just like buying a piece of ground and, planting corn, and it's going to turn around and it's going to grow and it's going to have yield and it's going to produce things for you. So there's not a whole lot of difference, except one, they can go out, see it, touch it, feel it. The other, it's an imaginary piece of paper. So,
well, going from that to an individual, like a person that owns their own business. So you and I talk a lot about, because I'm always curious about when you own a small business, you're kind of on this roller coaster constantly.
Kind of.
You can have really great years, and then you can have a year where you're going to be on the side of the freeway begging for change, right? Mm-hmm. The effort level doesn't change. It's just economic circumstances change, right?
Yeah.
So take the pandemic. For a lot of people, that could have been, in my opinion, and you can disagree with this if you want, the greatest thing that could happen is to stop, and I'm not going to say reset because that's a term that you should be looking into, the Great Reset. But when you get a chance to stop that wheel that you're on and you can look back and go, what's working, what's not? Because the phrase, I want to work in my business. I can't work on it at the same time.
Yeah.
So a lot of small business people, and again, you'll hear we're going to do a show with somebody that literally can tell you all of that from the small business angle soon. But what happens is you get so stuck doing what you're doing, you think that I can just put in more effort.
Yeah.
But you don't have time to look at what's going wrong to stop it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in my personal business, I always try to take the first 10 to 15 minutes of the day to do something either to sharpen my saw, to better myself, read a leadership book or read an article or become more knowledgeable, because as soon as the day hits, you get caught up in the whirlwind. And I think a lot of people just don't have that structure put into their business, so they don't take the time to do that type of stuff. And if they would take even just 10 or 15 minutes a day to sit back and write down or look at, okay, this is what we're doing well, this is what we're not doing well, stop, start, and continue. What do I need to stop doing? What do I need to start doing? What do I need to continue doing? Taking that few minutes just to look at that, even if you're just looking at it on a day-by-day basis, okay, this is what happened yesterday. That would be, the results would be immeasurable if you did that consistently over time.
It'd be beautiful if people would do that, but they're not going to do that.
No, they're
right. So you're not going to change your habits. If things are going really well, like we know a guy where we were having a conversation with him down in your hometown where the guy literally walks over and things couldn't be better. I bought an RV, I bought all this other stuff. And it's just like, hey man, have you thought about you might want to retire? Like you need to have that in place, right? That's not the conversation you had with him. My thought was, because that's what we were talking about, is this guy's going to have the sweetest RV to live in down by the river because he doesn't. What is your plan to get out of your business and retire? Because he owns a business.
Right.
Right.
That's a valid point. A lot of folks, they fail to think about a succession plan. It's okay. I've got this idea. I want to start a business. I want to do this. I want to do this, this, and this. And then they start checking the boxes. Okay, I've achieved this, I've achieved this, I've achieved this. But when they first started, they never set up, well, how do I shut it down? What do I do when I no longer want to do this or am capable of doing it? I tell everyone that the average retiree in the United States retires earlier than they planned, which is surprising. Most people think, how is that possible? And it's not a good thing.
I'm thinking that right now. Yeah. How is that possible?
They're not retiring because they want to. It's because they have to. They have a heart attack. They have a stroke. They have a knee replacement. One of my best friends is a mechanic. You cannot wrench on cars until you're 70 years old, or your hands are going to look like Anthony Munoz's. I mean, it's a hard living, right? So, a lot of folks, when they get into their business or their line of profession or whatever they're doing, they don't think about the big picture and the end of what this is going to look like. So, when I work with small business owners, it's all one of the questions I ask is like, all right, how are you going to get out? What does that look like to you?
What is their reaction when you say that?
It's mixed.
Because I think you actually said that to me and I got kind of pissed off about it. Like, I'm not going to leave this but you know what? You bring up a good point.
Right.
As a sole proprietor, I can get in a car accident or
Yep.
My daughter might want to go to school in North Carolina, so I don't want to be here. So how do I shut it down? There's
an infinite amount of possibilities that can happen that can create a situation where you have to get out of a business. And just like anything, whether it's a stock or whether it's a piece of farmland or whether it's a small business, the real risk in doing that isn't really losing everything, because as long as you put the effort in and you have a sound process, you're going to be successful. 90% of life is showing up at this point,
Right.
But the real risk is being forced to make a decision at a bad time, right? So with a stock, it's being forced to sell a good investment at a bad price. Piece of farmland, same thing. Hey, I need to raise money because I'm in a nursing home. And so now I've got to sell ground. Well, if someone finds out that you're in a nursing home and you're selling ground because you have to, do you think they're going to pay top dollar for it? No,
Right.
it's going to be a fire sale. Same thing with a business, is if you're trying to get out because you just had a stroke or you got cancer or whatever could have happened, your circumstances changed. Now you're up shit's creek and you got no paddle. I mean, there's literally, you have to do whatever you got to do to get as much out of that business as you can.
Well, so I want to go into back to when everything kind of seized up, right? Well, the average American before that, what is it, 68 or 70% of Americans didn't have $1,000 for an emergency saved up. Have you heard that?
So yeah, I think it was half of the adults in our country couldn't come up with $500 in an emergency, and 70% couldn't come up with $1,000.
So let's take that number. A lot of these people are running, I don't care if they're running a pizza shop, if they're running a architectural firm. The same people that are balancing the books there are balancing their own books. So you could see why there wasn't enough profit for you to be shut down for 60, 90 days, whatever, right?
Yeah.
That person, how do they plan not just to retire or get out, but how do they make an effort to take care of themselves now? Because you always say, take care of yourself first. You tell me that. Because I always say, I want to, pay for my daughter's college and all that stuff. And you keep saying, you got to take care of yourself first. And that's extremely rude, because I'm not done talking when you do that, because I'm going to make a very point that makes no sense. But tell me why you say take care of yourself first.
Well, so in that particular situation, my advice to people, if you're thinking about paying for education, is that with regard to education, your kids can always go and get an education, whether you pay for it or not, whether it's through grants, student loans, or scholarships, or if they get a job and pay for it, part-time. There's always going to be an opportunity for them to become more educated. If you don't take care of yourself first, there's not going to be an opportunity to retire or to have another chance to save money for your future. And, again, going back to the fact is that people are going to retire one way or the other, whether they want to or not. And if they're thrown into a situation where, they have to retire, they're forced to retire, they're going to live a life that they didn't want to live. And when I sit across the table from somebody, there are two things, especially if they're in their 70s or 80s or 90s, there are two things that everyone tells me. If they have multiple children, the first thing is, I want my children to have a relationship when I'm gone. That's number one. Number two is, I don't want to be a burden on my children. Well, if you don't take care of yourself, you're going to be a burden on your children at some point, right?
Tell me, but expound on that, because I can tell you from my own, what I'm seeing in my own family and other families is that somebody has, they're close to 100 years old. So it's home health care versus a nursing home. And we know somebody that works in one of those retirement villages. I mean, it's like some of them are up to $12,000 a month.
Yeah.
But somebody's got to pay for that. That's coming out of somebody's either what they accrued during their life, or the family's got to come up with it.
Yeah,
so
or the government.
Right. So you've got to make a lot of choices for someone else. And that's still going to, I don't want to say drain on the finances, but it really does. You have to plan accordingly that might happen.
Yeah. I mean, look, the reality is we all have expiration dates, right? I'm not here forever. You're not here forever. Nobody is.
Yourself.
Yeah. Right. You're going to have like your head in a jar, like on Futurama or something.
Yeah, like Ted Williams.
By the way, sponsored by Futurama.
Yeah, sponsored by Futurama for all future episodes.
Yes. We should call up Matt, what is it? Matt Groening?
Matt Groening, yeah.
Yeah.
That guy has a couple of bucks.
Just a few. He could sponsor this show. Anyway, so yes, we're not going to be here forever. So why are we walking around acting like we are?
Right.
Too many people, you have this, and I guess as you get older, you start thinking more about, what the end of your life's going to look like. But the reality is that you're either going to pass away or you're going to get sick and pass away. And if you just pass away in the middle of the night, hey, fantastic. That's wonderful. You lived a great life. If you get sick and pass away, it's going to look very different. It is unbelievably expensive to die in this country. Unbelievably. And call it, you can name any reason you want to, whether it's because of our government, because of corporate America, because of insurance companies. You can blame anybody you want to. But at the end of the day, we all have a responsibility to take care of our own house. At least that's how I view things, right? So when I'm talking to folks, you got to plan for it. It's going to happen. We might as well talk about it, get it out on the table, and then move on. Be done with it. And then we can worry about other things that maybe matter a little bit more.
Do you think you take a different tact because of the way that you grew up? Because, I'm going to say you didn't have every advantage growing up, so you had to learn about these things to take care of yourself and your kids, versus some people get in this field because their father was a banker or some kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably part of it. Also, my mom, she was a nurse for 30 years. So, I've been in that field. I've been around it. I've seen it. I've lost people in my life early on. So I've had to experience it. My wife, God love her, she still has all 4 grandparents still alive, which is amazing because she's, we just turned 38. It doesn't happen very often. So, just the fact that I've experienced things like that, I've been in positions where, I've had to pull myself up by my own bootstraps, so to speak. Now, thank God I had bootstraps, right? Because some folks don't even have that.
Right.
So I don't know if it's just been my experience, just my life experience or what it is. But, the other thing is I do take an intentional approach to how I run my business. My job's to do 4 things. It's to help people organize, grow, protect, and then if and when that day comes, transfer the things to people they care about. And I take it very seriously, and every piece has a purpose. So I feel like if I'm not having those conversations with people, then I'm not doing my job. I'm not serving them to the capability that I should be. So I don't know what it is exactly that causes me to take that approach. It's just how I view life, is that we all have an obligation to do the right things for our family.
Wow, what a patriot. I want to, if you are sitting here or people that are watching this or listening to this, the small business guy, not the guy just starting out, because again, those expenses are out of control because you're trying to figure out your own personal roadmap. But the person that's been in business 3 to 10 years and is making the minimal contribution to their 401k and those kind of things, what is your advice to them? Because I wish I would have known you 10, 12 years ago, because all I was doing was not personally.
I was going to say.
Not personally, just what you do for a living. I wish I didn't know you personally now, but when I look at what I've done, I think I did the right things, but those big years, it was worrying about tax write-offs. So I'm going to buy something so I have something to write off versus really truly investing it. I think people think that I'm just going to put in my 401k and I'm going to move on and that's going to be it. But we were doing numbers just because we're numbers nerds and we're playing around with it. And it was like, literally, this wouldn't get you through 5 years.
Yeah. So I think what brought that up was I was having, oftentimes when I go into businesses, because I do consult with quite a bit of businesses, and I do 401ks, I do SEP IRAs and simple IRAs and things like that. And so I was talking to the employees and they're like, yeah, we max out our contributions. I'm like, oh, it's fantastic. You put away 20 grand a year or 25 grand a year if you're over 50 or whatever. They said, oh, no. We don't put that much money away. I'm like, well, then what do you mean you're maxing it out? Like, well, we're getting our maximum match. And it doesn't matter what company you work with. If you have a 401k, they have some kind of a match, right? So you got to put away 6% to get 3%, or you got to put away 5% to get 4%. So they were maxing out their opportunity for free money from the company, and they thought that was going to get them to where they needed to be. And we started doing the math. I think we came up with, if you make 50 grand a year and you put away 5% to get 4%, you're putting away somewhere around, $4,500 or $5,000 a year. And I started like, okay, so $4,500, let's use 5,000 because I'm from Pickaway County, so I need easy math.
You need round numbers.
I need round numbers. I can't do complex math, right? So $5,000 a year times 30 years is 150 grand, right? Now, if you grow it really well and you make a ton of money on it, maybe it's 600, maybe it's $1 million. But we're also talking about 30 years, so the cost of living has doubled at least 1.5 times.
Right.
So, let's say it's $1 million. It's really not $1 million. It's more like, I don't know, 300,000 or 400,000.
Right.
At the end of the day, because every 20 years, the cost of living doubles. So you cut $1.5 million once, do that another half of a time. I mean, it's like,
well, it's kind of like growing up in Columbus and then in your 50s moving to New York City with the same amount of money.
yes,
You're going to be living in a squalor, stealing food from people because your retirement money didn't last long enough.
right. Yeah. So, helping people understand that don't let the minimum be your maximum. That's not a good strategy for success. So.
Now, before we get out for today, what is if your perfect person that you could talk to, who would that be? Like, who would your because I can tell you my favorite person. My favorite person is somebody that's already spending money and literally goes, it's not working at all. Because we can change that, right? It's not convincing the person who's never done it that this is what you have to do, right? I would think it's easier in any case to move someone's mental mindset about it versus, hey, you're at 0. This is where you need to be in 10 years.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
That's an impossible question. Honestly, I like the people who ask me questions like, I don't know if I have enough. Well, I can tell you if you do or not. I've got a process to find that out. Those are the people that I want to talk to is people who don't know or who have questions about, I don't know if I have enough. If you don't know if you have enough, if you're working with a professional, shame on them because they're not doing their job. I mean, that's my first thought is, whether you work with, regardless of who you work with, they should be able to tell you, hey, this is where you're at and this is how much you need.
Right.
That is, in my opinion, in our industry, that is table stakes. That should be expected. Likewise with performance, if you're investing and you expect it to grow, it should grow. I mean, the market makes bad advisors look pretty good sometimes. Other times it exposes them, right?
Wow. Way to end on a high note. I feel like we've done that 2 weeks in a row. We've ended on death last week, and then some people are terrible.
Well,
Johnny, well done today. That's going to be it for Broad Street Radio this week. We will not be just the two of us the next time around, but stay tuned and we will see you next week.